And we have Sam Lessin from Slow Ventures in the studio. Welcome to the studio, Sam.
Gentlemen.
There he is.
It's Jessica Lessin's husband. Put
There
it
you
on
go.
the
That's
camera.
what I am.
It's just
In the
like-
flesh.
I saw her like literally minutes ago. That's how
No
famous
way.
I am.
Tell her to come by at least and say hi if she's not busy.
Yeah.
She's busy this moment, but
Okay,
you know,
well, we're
maybe
too-
later.
Yeah, well, we got
We're-
30 minutes.
We,
you know?
we got the crossover of the century, TBPN, the information. It dropped today. It was great.
I love that. Yeah, I knew about the development of that story from dinner conversations.
Oh, yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, I bet. I
Yeah.
bet.
Yeah, we were very happy
Abe
with
is the man.
Yeah.
There you go.
It was fun hanging out with him, and
Kind of the Seymour
Wait, so
Hersh
are you
of
guys
tech.
are the cover of the weekend section? Is that right?
We are.
The big
yeah.
read.
Are you guys
The
going to
big
do a
read.
print edition for
That's
us?
coveted space.
It
I
is.
always thought that they should actually do a
Yeah.
print edition. I think it's time.
No,
Everything
it's
goes in a
Fine.
cycle.
I got the Wall Street Journal here. I need.
Yeah,
the
it
information.
really-
I know.
need
I
the-
was in
a
a-
once weekly
be so good.
Saturday dropped off on the doorsteps of every
100%. I
home.
would like
$5,000
hire
in
the
a shoe.
kids to like deliver it with the you know throwing it out the window.
Yeah.
Look, I was in an airport lounge in Germany 2 days ago, and they had all the print newspapers. And I'm like, look, there's a missing opportunity here. The Germans want to read about the information. They want to read about technology, brothers.
Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course.
Let's get it to him.
You guys are big in Germany, I'm sure.
Well, somebody started translating our streams into
Dutch, which
and
was interesting.
They're doing other
We've been
things.
That doesn't
translated
seem
into
like
a
the
few
first
things.
choice. Like, don't you
No.
want like Mandarin or something?
I
Like,
think
Dutch
there's
doesn't
just a
seem
Yeah,
like
Dutch
your
we're
number
trying to
one.
get we're trying to get big on Weibo.
Yeah.
know?
That's
Yeah.
next. Yeah.
But we're expecting to have some
pushback.
challenge, some pushback.
Figure it
Anyways, it's great to have you on as
Always
always.
fun. Congrats on all your success. You guys are everywhere. This isn't the new studio yet, though.
Well, you're
No,
a part
not
of
yet.
it. You're
Next
a part
week.
of you're a part of that
You have to
success.
come down next time you're in LA. Come by in person. It'd be
I'll
great.
come by in
Yeah,
person sometime. Why
Tuesday
not?
will be the first show.
Yeah.
It's a lot
person.
closer than Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's there?
Is that the
guys.
new? Is that the new
CNBC.
Netflix?
CNBC.
Oh,
You can't make this whole CNBC rival thing and not know where CNBC is.
Everyone always says,
Did you see?
like, Andrew Reid was like, oh, they're making Squawk Box for tech. And I was like, gotta start watching Squawk Box, I guess.
Netflix.
I guess we're
Netflix
inspired
is
by all these
also
things that I
Netflix
don't
has a new
watch.
billion-dollar New Jersey
Okay.
studio.
Maybe
which would
maybe
be
some New
interesting.
Jersey, and maybe we're taking the fight to New Jersey in the future. We'll see.
Just think LA's fine. LA's
Where
fine.
were you?
Yeah,
Where were you traveling this week?
I
I'll
went.
be
I've had an insane travel schedule, but I was Monday. I was New York, Frankfurt, New York, San Francisco was my week.
What's going on in Germany?
Germany was a personal thing I had to take care of, but New York was the Solana acceleration. What is it? The big Solana conference, which they call,
nice.
which is ship or die. Very dramatic. branding.
Nice. You're infamous there, right? The GM guy. Do you still get comments on that?
You know, I saw Raj backstage. You know, I was one of Solana's first investors. I like my Jason Calcanis. I was the first investor in Uber. Was like I do that for Solana, right? And so you know I've known those guys for a long time, and I saw Raj backstage. We were reminiscing when I did the GM thing, which became one of the first meme coins and blew up, and got, if you remember, got Raj banned.
No, I know. I know.
From,
that was
from
crazy.
Twitter.
It was
So
such
he and
a
I
funny.
were
It was
joking
such-
about that.
Yeah, this was like Twitter still, right? So it was like somebody
Yeah.
at Twitter was like didn't get the joke, obviously didn't have context that like you guys are boys and just
Yeah.
hit the
so
ban
I mean,
button.
the thing is, I unfortunately have other people on Twitter legitimately threaten to kill me, which that's not so good. You got to get that taken down. But the Raj was a pretty funny one for them to respond so quickly to.
yeah, quick reaction. There's so much to cover in
It's
the news.
AI week.
It's AI week.
It's in it every week, AI week, boys.
No, but
this
this
one was
week-
particularly AI week
Because
because
of
we
I/O.
got Microsoft
Because of
Build,
Ivy.
Google I/O, OpenAI I/O, Anthropic. A big. Are you taking a victory lap on the idea that this is a sustaining innovation that Google's going to
You
win?
know, you guys actually, I'll tell you a funny anecdote.
yeah,
of that.
yeah.
You guys know my associate Jack Rains. You know this guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're
Jack sitting. He's right over there.
Okay.
Jack, he can come wave for a second.
Hey,
So
Jack, come say hi.
Jack sends me this long missive this week about how amazing Google is and how Google is going to win the AI wars.
What's up, dude?
And I'm like, what value are you adding? I've been saying this for 2 years. I'm like, thank you. I'm like,
I want to check out all the little Google.
I was like,
Google's apps.
Jack, you know, you're an associate at an early stage venture capital fund. Telling us to buy Google stock is not exactly
Hey,
And
Thanks.
You guys, I want to see Slow as the next crossover.
Yeah, crossover.
Let's
Become
put-
an RIA.
put
do
30%
it.
of the
we'll
fund.
never. We've actually looked into it. It's definitely not a thing we will ever do.
No, I mean, the my favorite comparison. I forget who posted it, but they were like, do you want Google at 17 times earnings or Costco at 50 times earnings, like at this moment, at this AI
guys,
inflection point?
Sure.
Post,
Actually,
look, here's the negative on IO. The negative on IO is that, per usual, Google's actually terrible at marketing, right? And so they just launch everything. And so you're like, I have no idea even where to focus right now, right? Like it's not.
my value comes in figuring out.
Thanks, Jeff.
Focus on generative AI videos. VO3.
Anyway,
That's the thing.
It's like so many things. You're like, I don't know.
I
But
know.
the net of it is like they're just crushing it, right? Like from a tech perspective. And I gotta say, I'll tell you a funny story. I spent like 20 hours, quote unquote, vibe coding over the last week because I was on so many airplanes. And it turns out airplane Wi-Fi, vibe coding, perfect match of activity. So I just was like messing with these things till my eyes bled. And you know what happened in hour 11?
What?
I stopped using ChatGPT and went all in on Gemini because it's actually better. 2.5 Pro is just like way better at a bunch of these coding tasks. It's better at structuring. There's like a bunch of stuff. So I think it was absolutely a Google week.
But we're using Codex.
No, I wasn't using Codex.
Oh,
I
there you
was.
go.
See, well, then, like,
There's always another, there's
skill
always another
issue.
tool. Look, this is one of my other insights from the week. Spending a week, literally flying around the country, vibe coding in the air.
Yeah.
Is the whole what model to use thing is a complete fucking mess, right? And I think the analogy I now have in my head is it's kind of like, imagine walking into a crowded room where you don't know anyone and saying, who should I trust, right? And then, by the way, every 2 seconds, a new person pops into the room. You've no, and like people are like, oh,
or you can trust this person 95% of the time. You can't trust them with your life,
that's a totally separate train of thought, which I think is important. I was talking to some entrepreneurs today about, if you think about what AI is today, it's like having it a B- employee or like an 80%er. And the question is, how do you get value out of 80%ers is actually more difficult than it looks in a lot of ways, right? Because the reality is so much of work is about trusting.
But isn't
someone.
it more their B- because you're averaging their effectiveness on different things? In my experience, it's like for certain tasks, it's like 80-90% of the time it's amazing, and then some percentage of the time it's so bad that you would ask the employee, is everything okay? Like you've
kind
never
of, but I think the thing I really think about, guys, is if you think, people are always like, oh, there are all these tasks that AI is more efficient at, and so clearly those jobs will just go away and it'll be it. And I think that's like exactly the wrong model, because the reality, what people don't understand is the real reason you hire people to do work is not to do the work. It's to have a throat to choke when the work goes badly, right? It's like, why do you have an accountant? You don't have an accountant to do your taxes. You have an accountant so that when the IRS comes and says, what's wrong with why did you get this wrong? You're like, I didn't do it, that guy did it, right? And so I think that's the interesting thing, is like, there's all these models like, great, good news, you get rid of the employee and now you get a queue that's mostly right and you approve, and you're like, I don't want to approve that stuff. Like the whole point is to have someone else.
Yeah, I think
validate,
our example is like,
right?
we use a lot of the different deep research products, and like we still would love to hire an amazing researcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
And,
you
like,
can
we're
fire them
power
when
users.
they're wrong, right? Like you need, like, it's just, the point is like, there's this whole, I think there's a lot of like nuance.
Well, it's an agency thing too. It's like if you could tell deep research to like try itself and then try other products and then combine the outputs of all the different things, and
knowing
maybe
what
that's a
questions to
research
ask
agent
and
that
stuff,
can
and-
there's all these things, but I think the ultimate model in my mind is, I don't even care what the average persons are using. I don't care about some review online that's 4 stars for coding for this type of, I don't care. What I care about is, what are the smartest people I know in the world using, and like, how do you make that transparent? So I can just be like, oh, it's this type of task, I'm going to trust this model for that. And like, that needs to be up to date. It's much more of like an identity problem or like a human trust problem, right, than it is, a technology problem in a lot of ways. And it's just changing really fast. So it's been a fascinating week. But net, I mean, pulling all the way up, yes, I'm taking a victory lap on Google wins. And yes, I'm taking a victory lap on incumbents win. Because that's what's happening.
So you're saying to Jack, like, thanks for reading my memo from 2 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. Well, in fairness to Jack, he wasn't on the team 2 years ago.
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
very
yeah,
excited to discover Notebook L. But
Love you, Jack.
we gotta get him out of the pool house.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I want to talk about some other stuff. What do you think about the Johnny Ive news and hardware generally?
I mean, where to begin?
I know. This is my favorite part of having you on the show. We don't have to prompt at all. We just like we could give you 3 words. Johnny, Ive, hardware.
Well, okay, a
And
few
you can
things.
just-
First of all, I mean, my tweet on this when it was happening was like, well, I guess all these $100 million AI researchers are cheap, right? Like it's the designers that are going to get paid bank on acqui-hires in this era, right? Look, I think it was marketed in a really interesting way, right? Like it's marketed as like they tried to pick the biggest number possible. It's a 2%. They paid 2% for this thing, right? For him, they marketed as it's this big number. I think because it's kind of the pissing match of AI, right? Is you're supposed to look really big and powerful with big number. And I'm sure Johnny doesn't mind being told that he's worth $6 billion, but like it's kind of one of those interesting PR stories of like how you shape the narrative as much as anything else. The hardware thing is interesting. Like on one hand, I actually think it's like if you're OpenAI, you do need a hardware play. You're gonna get fucked otherwise, right? Like how Meta discovered this years ago, which is like being beholden to other people's hardware is really tough, right? In this case, it's only more so, right? Because of kind of the way these chips are gonna fall with Android and iOS. So I don't think they're wrong. And like Meta's got its glasses. Everyone's so like it's not strategically wrong from first principles. I think the problem is that I have is I just think that like the likelihood they're gonna successfully introduce a new piece of hardware is like 0, right? Like, and that's just, it's, you're gonna have a phone, and they could try to compete on the phone, but it's very hard for them to imagine building like a fully featured phone that, whatever, and then also having something that's so break.
Well, the one thing that does seem clear, haven't they said this is a new type of device that will integrate with your phone and your computer, and that screams to me, okay, well. Is app? Yeah. I said septum piercing where
I
AI
saw that.
wearable.
Well, my take was eCane. Did you see eCane? So when I left in 2014.
No, but sorry to finish my thought. The issue with that is if you're saying we're going to create a new device that integrates with your Apple ecosystem, that seems like a bit of a uphill battle. Look what happened to Pebble, right, and the Apple Watch, right?
In the end of the day, it's like, look, you have the iPhone is a hugely breakthrough device. This is, by the way, not my line; it's a friend's line. But like, hugely breakthrough device. You already had a phone, right? It wasn't like a new thing you were putting on your body. The glasses work. That's a thing that was already on your body. The watch work. It's a thing
Headphones,
you're not,
same thing.
It's really hard to imagine you're gonna get through with some new device. So my joke, but it's only half a joke, is look, 12 years ago, I got obsessed with the idea of making an e-cane. So imagine like bringing back the cane, right?
That's what you meant.
And
I had no idea what you meant.
Like Novocaine. Yeah,
and if you think about the cane, it's,
Wizard
it's
staff.
actually you put a shitload of batteries in it.
Yeah.
Big antenna, right? And what the nice part is, like, the world is getting less safe, so you can beat people with it. The world is aging, so like everyone needs canes.
Everyone needs canes.
There's all these like macro trends in favor of bringing back the cane. And then could you drop like a GPU and a microphone and a camera in the top and like talk to your cane
Smart
and like
cane. Smart cane.
Smart cane.
a smart cane.
No more dumb. I don't
if-
want to be pitched any more non-AI canes. Okay, I've had enough. Like,
I'm just saying, like, if they actually, if OpenAI came out and like we're bringing back the cane, I'd be
that'd
like,
be great.
all right, listen, for all my
staff.
shitting
Well,
on this.
you know that Johnny Ive got his start at a design firm that was working on bathrooms, and so maybe there's all like smart toilet.
Yeah, well, there is. Someone just came out. There is like a new Fitbit for your poop.
Okay.
I know some friends that have funded that. That's
Wait,
the thing.
I funded that.
You funded that.
Yeah.
I know some people that funded that. I funded it.
It's called Throne.
I think
it's called Throne. I
Okay.
think it's interesting for a bunch of reasons. One is it's just like personally as like a quote unquote biohacker, there's so much information on how your digestion, what's happening with your digestion, your hydration, all these different things.
Look, in the end of the day, you want to copy behaviors people are already doing. And in college, one of my roommates, Brian, would send me pictures of his poop all the time. So like,
I don't like that at all.
you just got to double down.
Let's
Brutal.
move on.
Brutal.
Let's move on.
Brutal.
Hyperscaler capex. Give us anything to get us off of this.
Well, here's my
no.
hyperscaler. Hyperscaler capex. Here's my line on it. I flew through JFK today. They're spending $20 billion renovating JFK.
Yeah.
I'm like, this capex is nothing. Spend more money on AI. Like, if you're going to spend $20 billion on like renovating JFK, all of a sudden spending $100 billion on AI doesn't seem so crazy.
What about say as much as you can about what Meta's playbook over the next kind of 6 to 12 months. I know they've been having talent, kind of retention.
Llama was the
Llama,
big
Behemoth, delayed.
Look, in the end of the day, I, as you know, have huge respect for the team there and the leadership there. I think the beauty of Meta, as I've said many times, is it's a heads you win, tails you win, right? From a investor perspective, right? Which is, if you think about it, it's like the most obvious, highest value use case in the world for everything that exists is making ads way more targeted and effective, right?
Yep.
And that's happening, and it's an incredible trend to ride, and they're going to crush it. Mark and that team is like deeply competitive. They want to win, right?
Yep.
And so just from a pure competition perspective, I think they're going to like go to the mat to win. And like there'll be many chapters to that. But the good news is they have a massively profitable business and a immediate use case, right? That is deeply aligned. And so I learned a long time ago to never bet against Mark, especially when he cares about it.
Yeah, it feels like with Meta,
does.
there's huge value to having Llama be a free LLM for them that they can vend into every corner of the app, even in places the consumer doesn't feel or see. So profanity filtering and understanding what content goes where, ad matching, generative AI to clean up Instagram photos, all these things that will
Serving
just be
better
under the
content.
surface,
Yeah.
as opposed to what Google's doing, which is like, now we have 10 new apps, Notebook LM. Like we're not seeing that from Meta, and maybe that's the right strategy.
Look, in the end of the day, Meta has the most natural, beautiful use cases for AI, which is what you're pointing out. And therefore, like, they don't need to do a bunch of crazy shit, right?
Yeah.
They just need to like win at like the core. And then basically, again, the open source thing is clear. It's like they actually, think about ads. They don't really care if they're doing the AI or someone else's, because it's all going to go to them either way, right? In the end of the day, it's just better if more people have access to it and the innovation will happen. So look, one of the things I did in my Vibe when I got really into like all the platforms, right? I spent a bunch of time. Remember DigitalOcean? DigitalOcean's doing a great job with AI, right? Like it turns out like their services are really good. And like it was really easy to boot up some agents on top of like, a knowledge base on top of,
That's always the worst
applet.
part is like deploy, you write some code and you want to actually get it on a server. It's always still a hassle.
And it's like,
Now,
they've actually done a great job. I was like incredibly impressed, but like, and then you say like, where's Llama showing up? It's like, well, it's like right there. Like you just click a button and you're using Llama. And it's like, no bullshit.
We got to get a killer video generation model out of Meta. Like they're the
how do
only
you
one
see
that
that
has another data source
how
that's
do you
similar
see
to
that
YouTube.
market? How do you see that market evolving? There's a bunch of foundation model labs doing video generation, and I can see some of those getting to the point where they could crush it for big Hollywood movie studio, making very specific types of scenes or assets. But then it feels like the low end of the market for, if you're a random SMB and you want to make an ad or something like that, maybe use some vertical SaaS, but also
I wonder how much it matters. I mean, like, I had this conversation actually with my good friend Dave Morin on our little weekly, bullshit session.
More or less.
We were talking about the fact that
Dave also somehow cracked like the top of the angel. There was like the top
He's
angel
number
investor
one.
list, and he was the top dog.
It's amazing.
So
let's stick on the
effect.
AOL. We won't talk about
Ashton
the validity of that list. We'll talk about we could. But
I mean, I just like to see my boy Dave at the top.
I like to see. Look, my
I
boy
like lists.
Kevin. My partner Kevin was like number 4 on the list. It was a very interesting
Let's
list.
go.
But I wasn't on the list, but that's okay. But what I was gonna say is the thing Dave and I were talking about is like, look, if you think about what's going on like with memes, right, in this whole world, there's this like high road, low road thing. Everyone's really excited about like super high end video generation and Hollywood and da. You know what's happened in the media landscape? Those things don't make any money. No one cares about these movies anyway. Like they're consuming like low end crowdsourced memes on the internet. Like that's where attention is. That's where the energy is. That's where entertainment is. And so I think obviously the pure technologists and like the highfalutin people are really excited about like the narrative storytelling, beautiful, da. But when it comes to like what tools will actually be used, how things will be marketed, how humans will interact with each other and communicate in the story, I think actually it'll be much more budgety tools that actually win. And the other stuff is kind of just, intellectual, masturbation a little bit. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Like people
Speaking
should do
of
it.
that,
Like, from a business perspective.
Speaking of masturbation, why is OnlyFans getting priced at 8 times earnings?
I so desperately want to buy OnlyFans, guys. I've wanted to buy it for years. I had plans, like there's been a few iterations of this. No, it's so good. It's so good. And
just
What do you
keep
have
it
against
going.
OnlyFans?
I
Just a
just
mess.
So good.
It's
This
a-
is,
it's a
but
mess.
your reaction is part of the reason I want to buy it, right?
No,
Which
no,
is-
you
Of
love
course,
the
'cause
controversy.
the buyer pool is small, so the price is low.
well, that's part of it. The other thing is everyone, because the buyers, it's actually the best AI short you could possibly think of, right? Because part of the reason it's getting sold, my understanding, and like the whole
Yeah.
story is like, well, we're gonna have all these AI girlfriends,
Sure.
so like the creator economy is gonna get crushed on these things. And I think that is like a very 101 simplistic take on what's actually.
The other thing is a lot of the cost that goes into basically generating revenue on OnlyFans is from messaging, which is
Yeah.
done by people in
It's already
all-
the Philippines.
LLMs
Well,
already
and
India.
AI. So this is the thing.
Yeah.
Everyone, the OpenAI is like the greatest human loop AI platform in existence, right? From a position, because you have, I think you still need real brands. I think that having human brands matters at the top end. Your ability to then like effectively automate, it's kind of like the Facebook story, which is your ability to slot in AI and bank it right on messaging is like off the charts with OnlyFans and improve the quality. So I think it's interesting. I think it's like this classic thing where it's being sold. I've always loved the asset. It's the number one creator platform in the world. It's so defensible because they actually have a very low take rate because they're so big. No one can assault them, right? Because of how they're kind of set up.
What's
And
the take rate?
it's like it's really low. I want to say it's like 10%, maybe 15, but it's like much lower than you think. And as a result, like you have this incredible cash engine.
I mean,
right?
YouTube's like 45%, and
Right.
many other sites are 30% just for general content creation
So
platforms.
just the upshot is like this incredible position. It's I think there are huge product opportunities that always have been with it. But then you have this double storm of like one, people like you guys boo it because you patrician technology brothers, right? Like, and you won't like acknowledge human nature and people want to do this. And then two, there's all these fancy investors who like think it's dead because they read the front page of the Wall Street Journal about AI and don't understand what's actually going on. I'm like, that's great. This is my
It's
zone.
underpriced.
Yeah, I have no.
Well, you're gonna have to become an RIA to do it, probably. So good
Well, I
luck.
got to figure out how to not do that. I also
Yeah.
like, for what it's worth, I'm a seed investor. I don't know how to raise the $2 billion I need, but call me if you got it.
Well, speaking of seed investors, I don't know if you saw this chart from PitchBook. Emerging managers are on track to raise less money this year than they have in a decade.
That sounds right.
It's now under $20 billion. During 2021, it was up at $60 billion. It was really spiked. 2022 was around $50 billion, and now we're down in like
Just
the
20
single
billion,
digit
just
billions.
one JFK renovation.
That is a lot of money for emerging managers. This is, I assume,
amount
this
of money.
defined as like
Where are you going to put
first
$20
fund.
billion as an emerging manager?
Wait, how much did they get in 2021?
Well, you
by the
put
way?
it. You put it in like 20,000 $50 million funds. That's the idea, at least, or that's what happened. Probably.
They're all. I've been so I don't see any of this working out for anyone, right? Like, you know, I know it's one of they'll always be the random winner.
Yeah, but isn't that the nature of the game? It's like startups follow a power law, so do funds.
I just think we have to hit a size gong because the 64 billion that they raised in 2021
Still earning
is
fees.
12 billion of fees.
Yep.
And so let's just give it up.
Congratulations to the
it's
emerging
all,
managers.
but it's kind of, guys. I think you guys are cheering too much. Like, if you do the math on
No,
being
I'm joking
small,
to be clear. I mean,
yeah, doing the math on being a small fund and being locked in for 10 years as like a solo GP with your emerging manager fund and your kind of shitty subscale, it's actually a pretty bad business.
What's
right?
wrong
Like,
with being locked in?
no.
I love being locked
That,
in.
like
I'm
what
always
you're saying,
locked
what
in.
you're saying is so real, which
Yeah.
is imagine you have a startup
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, you have to commit to this startup for a decade, even if by 2.5 years in, like it's
Is that
not
real
working.
though?
It's
Is that
not
real though?
working.
I feel like most emerging managers they write the checks in the first year and a half, 2 years, and then they get investor updates. They pass them along to LPs, but like they could go and get a job at big tech and
Sure, but
just
it's
become
still
PM.
even if it's a couple hours a week for 10 years.
Yeah, I guess that is a
It's,
kind of
look,
hassle.
it's also, it keeps you from doing other, it's just messy and
Sure.
complicated. And the reality is, again, like if you're earning 2 and 20 and you're never going to see the 20, right? Like the 2 ends up actually, you know, on a $50 million fund after you pay for actual things, you're doing fine. Like no one's crying, but like it's not like some great business, right? Like I think the only reason to raise a $50 million emerging manager fund is like to have enough card flips to prove that you can size up a bit. Now I think the flip side is true too, which is I don't know how anyone makes money on a seed fund that's over $200 million. I just, the math doesn't work, right? I think there's like a sweet spot of fund sizes that work. Too small, you know, the economics to make it work. even if you have a banger, it's like not that important. And like too big, it's just like the law of big numbers. You're never going to produce an important fund, right? From a returns perspective. So look, what we do, seed investing, we're, I think, in the sweet spot, obviously, because why would I not think that? You know, we've made money. I'm very proud of that. I care about DPI, whatever. But here's the thing.
Sorry, we're laughing. We have to explain because you can't see it. But the Chiron right now says seed investor. Don't become a seed investor.
Stay the fuck out. But then the reality is that, like, you know, it's not, even from my perspective, it's not the best business. You do it because you love it, right?
Yeah.
Like, but if you just did the math, being an asset manager and earning 2% and just getting enough DPI to justify more 2% fees is for sure a more scalable business model, which is why most people do it.
Do you think part of why every emerging manager jumps into seed is just like they can't do growth? Because I feel like the skill set of being a growth investor is in some ways more repeatable. You know, you get people that come out of investment banks and they have all the skills to underwrite a company that's at $1 billion. There's less risk. But at the same time, when you think about someone who's, you know, starting a new fund, if they're going out and raising a growth fund on fund one, like that just feels harder to marshal.
Well, I think
that
it's
capital.
an LP question. It's like, who's going to give you LP level dollars, right? And like, by the way, if you're going a later stage fund, you're trying to like model to like a guaranteed whatever it is, 2.5x or whatever.
Yeah.
Why would you give it to the crazy kid, right? The crazy kid you give money for because they might be right.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And so you want that seed bet. And then also I feel like a big part of the emerging manager dynamic is just like essentially scout funds. And there's a lot of like, you know, horse trading around like, yeah, we will do the deal from our fund of funds.
We started that way like, you know, 10 plus years ago. And like that when the market was much looser and it was a different market.
Yeah.
And it worked for us. And we were able to scale up into being like a legit seed fund, you know, with legit dollars and legit institutional investors. I just think like most things, that all paths get super crowded, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so once the path is super crowded, it's just really hard to differentiate. It's really hard to make a good business out of it. And I do think like almost everyone's going to go away, right?
Don't
Not
become
everyone,
a seed
but
investor. You heard it here first, folks.
Last, want your quick take. XAI's Portland data center fire. You think that's just a little accident, or you think Portland is doing Portland stuff?
That'd be really funny. That'd be really funny. It's God, have you guys ever read the science fiction book Parable of the Sower?
No.
Great book. I'm just finishing it now, but there's a whole subplot where there's all these people who are addicted to this drug that makes them like think that fire is the greatest thing on earth. So they're just like setting fire to everything. And like,
wow,
if that
this is
drug
funny. I just looked it up. It's a post-apocalyptic story set in 2025.
Wow.
I don't know if you caught that when you read it.
And like they're basically about people like trying to walk north from LA to like north to Seattle to escape craziness. But the so I don't know. If you told me that drug was invented in Portland, it wouldn't blow my mind.
Yeah.
I think we got to get a
Well, this is fantastic having you on. Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure,
fun.
Sam.
Fun time.
Happy
We'll talk to you
Friday.
soon.
Happy Friday.
Very
Talk soon.
quickly.
Cheers.